The dust cloud on the horizon was the last thing Willow Jenkins saw before her legs gave way beneath her. For 3 grueling days, she had traversed the unforgiving Arizona territory with nothing but determination and dwindling hope, her water supply depleted since noon the previous day. The towering wooden gate of the ranch appeared like a mirage through her sweat-stung eyes. Salvation within reach until darkness claimed her. Grayson Iverson wiped his brow under the punishing August sun of 1878, squinting at what he first thought was a tumbleweed caught against his gate. The realization that it was a woman collapsed, unmoving, sent him sprinting across the yard. Her skin burned hot with fever beneath his calloused hands as he gathered her limp form against his chest. Sun-streaked blonde hair clung to her face, and though dust coated her from head to toe, he could see she wore what had once been a fine traveling dress, now tattered and stained from a journey no lady should endure alone. "Miss, can you hear me?" Grayson asked, receiving no response as he carried her toward the ranch house. His foreman, Hank, appeared from the barn. "Boss, what in tarnation?" She fainted at the gate, Grayson replied tersely. "Send one of the boys for Doc Peterson. Tell him it is urgent." Inside his modest but well-kept home, Grayson laid the unconscious woman on his bed, hurrying to fetch water and cloths. As he bathed her flushed face, he took in her features, delicate but with a determined set to her jaw even in unconsciousness. Her hands showed blisters and scratches that spoke of recent hardship. When Dr. Peterson arrived an hour later, his diagnosis confirmed Grayson's fears. Exhaustion and dehydration, severe ones at that, the white-haired physician announced after his examination. "She's pushed herself beyond what any body should endure. It's a miracle she made it this far." "Will she recover?" Grayson asked, surprised by how much the answer mattered to him. "With proper care, yes. But she needs complete rest, plenty of fluids and good food when she awakens." The doctor packed his bag. "She shouldn't be moved for at least a week, possibly more." When the doctor left, Grayson sat beside the bed, watching the gentle rise and fall of the woman's chest. He'd seen plenty of hardship since establishing his ranch 5 years ago: drought, rustlers, the constant battle against nature itself, but something about this woman's plight touched him differently. "Who are you?" he murmured. "And what devil was chasing you to drive you to such lengths?" Night had fallen when she first stirred, eyelids fluttering open to reveal eyes the color of summer sage. Confusion clouded her gaze before panic set in. She tried to bolt upright, only to fall back with a groan. "Easy now," Grayson said, moving to her side with a cup of water. "You're safe." "Where am I?" Her voice cracked like autumn leaves. "Rocking I Ranch, about 20 miles outside of Gila Bend." He helped her sip water. "I'm Grayson Iverson. Found you collapsed at my gate this afternoon." She drank greedily until he pulled the cup away. "Small sips only, or you'll make yourself sick." "Willow," she whispered. "Willow Jenkins. Miss Jenkins, you've run yourself half to death. The doctor says you need complete rest." Memory seemed to flood back, and she again tried to rise. "I can't stay. I need to reach town by—" "You're not going anywhere," Grayson stated firmly, pressing a gentle but unyielding hand to her shoulder. "You're not moving until you're strong." "You don't understand," she protested weakly. "What I understand is that another mile would have killed you." His voice softened. "Whatever's chasing you isn't worth your life." Tears welled in her eyes. "It might be." "Then I reckon it can face me first," he replied, surprised by his own protectiveness. "Rest now. We'll talk more when you're stronger." Despite her protests, exhaustion reclaimed her, and Grayson settled into the chair beside the bed. Outside, coyotes called to the rising moon, and the wind whispered through the cottonwoods. Grayson hadn't expected company, especially not a half-dead woman with secrets in her eyes. but something told him Willow Jenkins would change everything about his carefully ordered world. 3 days passed before Willow could stay awake for more than brief periods. During those moments of consciousness, Grayson learned little except that she'd traveled from St. Louis, that she was 22 years old, and that something in her past made her start at shadows. He slept on a bedroll in the main room of his house, giving her privacy while remaining close enough to hear if she called out. On the fourth morning, he entered the bedroom to find her sitting up, color returning to her cheeks. "Good morning," he said, setting down a tray with porridge and coffee. "You're looking stronger. Thanks to your care." Her fingers twisted the quilt. "Mr. Iverson, I've imposed on your kindness far too long." "Grayson," he corrected. "And it's no imposition. Dr. Peterson will be by today to check on you. I can't repay you. I'm not asking for payment." He pulled a chair closer to the bed. "But I am asking for honesty. What drove you to such desperation?" Willow's gaze dropped to her hands. "Would you believe me if I said I was seeking a teaching position in Gila Bend? I might, if you weren't looking over your shoulder even in your sleep." He leaned forward. "I respect your privacy, Miss Jenkins, but if there's danger, I need to know what I might be facing." She seemed to measure him, weighing his trustworthiness. Finally, she spoke. "I was engaged to be married in St. Louis. My fiancé, Theodore Blackwood, is from one of the city's wealthiest families. I discovered he was involved in unsavory business. When I confronted him, I saw a side of him I hadn't known existed." "He hurt you," Grayson said, not a question. She nodded. "And threatened worse if I told anyone what I knew. I fled that night with what little money I had saved from my position as a governess. I've been traveling for weeks, taking odd jobs when I could." Her voice dropped. "I thought I was safe, but in Tucson, I glimpsed one of his men. I panicked and set out on foot when I couldn't afford the stagecoach." Anger simmered beneath Grayson's calm exterior. "And now I don't know what to do," she admitted. "I have $8 to my name and a teaching reference that's useless if he tracks me." Grayson stood and walked to the window, gazing out at the sprawling ranch land. After a moment, he turned back to her. "My housekeeper left 2 months ago to care for her ailing mother. The place has suffered for it. If you're willing, I'd offer you a position here until you're truly recovered. Room, board, and fair wages." Hope and suspicion warred in her expression. "Why would you help a stranger this way?" "Because 12 years ago I was the one running," he said simply, "and someone offered me a chance when I needed it most." For the first time since her arrival, Willow smiled a genuine expression that transformed her face. "Then I accept, Mr. Iverson, with gratitude." "Grayson," he reminded her, returning her smile. "Welcome to Rocking Eye, Miss Jenkins." "Willow," she countered. "If we're to be employer and employee, formality seems unnecessary." "Willow," he agreed, the name feeling right on his tongue. "Rest today. Tomorrow, if the doctor approves, you can start getting acquainted with the house." As he left the room, Grayson wondered at the strange turn his life had taken. For 5 years since establishing his ranch, he'd kept to himself, focused solely on building his herd and his reputation. Now, with Willow Jenkins under his roof, the quiet existence he'd carefully constructed felt suddenly, irrevocably changed. By the week's end, Willow had regained enough strength to move about the house unassisted. Dr. Peterson pronounced her recovery remarkable, but insisted she continue to rest and avoid strenuous activity. Grayson found himself watching her as she familiarized herself with the kitchen and parlor, noting how she absorbed details and organized spaces with quiet efficiency. "You've done well with this place," she remarked one evening as they shared supper, "but it could use a woman's touch." "My sister helped furnish it when I first built it," he explained. "She lives in Santa Fe with her husband now." You miss her, Willow observed. Family's important. He studied her. Do you have any? Pain flickered across her features. My parents died when I was 16. Fever took them both within days of each other. I became a governess shortly after. I'm sorry. It was a long time ago. She squared her shoulders. Mr. Iverson Grayson, I've been thinking about how I might be useful here. Your kitchen is well equipped but disorganized. And I noticed your account books on the desk are those for the ranch, he nodded. Not my favorite task. I have experience with bookkeeping from my governess position. The family owned several businesses. Grayson raised an eyebrow. A governess who kept books. A faint blush colored her cheeks. Mr. Harrington discovered I had a head for numbers when I corrected his calculations one evening. After that, he had me review the household accounts regularly. A woman of many talents, Grayson remarked, impressed. If you're offering to help with the books, I won't refuse. For the first time since her arrival, Willow laughed a musical sound that transformed her face and sent an unexpected warmth through Grayson's chest. I believe we've struck a bargain, Mr. Iverson. In the days that followed, Willow's presence breathed new life into the ranch house. The kitchen gleamed with newfound order. Meals appeared with surprising regularity and quality, and the account books revealed themselves to be far more comprehensible under her careful attention. Grayson found himself lingering over meals and evening conversations, drawn to her quiet intelligence and the determination that had clearly sustained her through hardship. Though still guarded about her past, she revealed pieces of herself in small ways: her love of literature, her skill with a needle, the way she hummed folk songs while working. 2 weeks after her arrival, Grayson returned from checking cattle to find Willow on the front porch, arms wrapped around herself despite the warm September afternoon. "What is it?" he asked, dismounting quickly. "A rider came by," she said, voice tight with fear. "Asked if I was staying here. One of your hands sent him away, but Grayson, I think. Which way did he go?" Grayson's hand moved instinctively to his revolver. "Toward town. He wore a bowler hat and had a scar across his chin." Grayson nodded grimly. "Stay inside. I'll send Hank to watch the house." He returned hours later, dust coating his clothes and concern etching his features. "He's staying at the hotel in Gila Bend. Goes by the name Carlton but didn't hide he's looking for you." Willow sank into a chair. "I should leave. I've brought danger to your door." "Running nearly killed you once," Grayson said firmly. "I'll not watch you risk your life again. What choice do I have? Theodore won't stop. His family's reputation and business would suffer if what I know became public." Grayson knelt before her chair. "What exactly did you discover, Willow?" She hesitated, then met his gaze. "He's been trafficking Chinese girls from San Francisco, selling them to brothels throughout the territories. I found ledgers in his study. Names, prices, destinations." Her voice broke. "Some were as young as 13. Rage coursed through Grayson, hot and immediate. "You have proof?" She shook her head. "Only what I saw. I couldn't take the ledgers when I fled. That's why he's so determined to find you." "Yes," she whispered, "and why I can't stay anywhere long. I won't risk anyone else becoming entangled in this." Grayson stood, pacing the room as he considered their options. Finally, he stopped, decision made. "You'll stay here. We'll deal with Carlton and anyone else Blackwood sends. You can't fight them all. I won't have to." His jaw set with determination. "Trafficking is a federal offense. We need to get word to the U.S. Marshal in Tucson." "They won't believe me without proof," Willow insisted. "Then we'll get proof." He sat beside her. "Willow, trust me. I won't let him hurt you again." The conviction in his voice made her eyes widen. Something passed between them in that moment, understanding, perhaps, or something deeper neither was ready to name. "Why risk so much for someone you barely know?" she asked softly. Grayson considered the question, surprised to find the answer came easily. Because in the short time you've been here, I've seen your courage, your intelligence, your kindness. Those are worth protecting. He paused. And because I believe you've had enough people fail you already. Tears filled her eyes. I've never had someone stand beside me before. Then it's long overdue. He took her hand, his calloused palm enveloping her smaller one. We'll face this together. That night, as Willow lay in bed listening to the sounds of the ranch settling into darkness, she realized something had shifted within her. For weeks, fear had been her constant companion, driving her forward, keeping her isolated. Now, in the shelter of Grayson's home and his surprising offer of alliance, she felt something unfamiliar take root. Hope, fragile but persistent, like the first green shoots after a long drought. The rider calling himself Carlton returned the following day, this time making it to the ranch house before Hank intercepted him. Grayson stood on the porch, shotgun resting casually across his arms. "State your business," he called as the man approached. Carlton smiled thinly, revealing tobacco-stained teeth beneath his meticulously groomed mustache. "I'm looking for a young woman, Willow Jenkins. I have reason to believe she's staying here. And your interest in her, family matter." Carlton's hand rested near his pistol. "Her fiancé is concerned for her well-being. She's been unwell." "Is that so?" Grayson's expression remained impassive. "No one by that name here." Carlton's eyes narrowed. "Mind if I look around for my peace of mind?" "I do mind." Grayson shifted slightly, bringing the shotgun to a more prominent position. "This is private property. Unless you've got a warrant, I suggest you turn around." The standoff lasted several tense seconds before Carlton touched the brim of his bowler. "Very well. But I'll be in Gila Bend for some time. Should Miss Jenkins appear, I'd appreciate word." "I'll keep that in mind." Grayson watched until the rider disappeared down the road before returning inside, where Willow waited, face pale but composed. "He'll be back," she said quietly. "Yes," Grayson agreed. "Which is why we need a plan." Over the next days, they crafted one. Grayson sent his most trusted hand to Tucson with a message for the U.S. Marshal, explaining the situation and requesting assistance. Meanwhile, Willow wrote down everything she could remember from the ledger's dates, names, locations, creating a detailed account of Blackwood's operation. "If they believe me," she said as she sealed the document, "it could be enough to investigate." "They'll believe you," Grayson assured her. With Carlton watching the ranch and the roads to town, they settled into an uneasy waiting game. Despite the tension, Willow found herself adapting to ranch life with surprising ease. She learned to distinguish between the hands who worked for Grayson, memorizing names and family connections. She discovered the rhythm of the ranch early mornings, the midday lull, the gathering at dusk as riders returned. Most evenings found her and Grayson on the porch after supper, watching darkness claim the desert. These quiet moments became something she treasured, their conversations ranging from books they'd read to places they'd seen. Grayson shared stories of his youth in Pennsylvania, his journey west after the war, and the years of labor that built his ranch. Willow found herself offering more of her own past her childhood in a small Missouri town, her parents' loving but modest home, the harsh adjustment to life as a dependent employee after their deaths. "I never thought I'd find peace again," she admitted one evening as they watched stars emerge in the darkening sky. "After my parents died, everything felt temporary." "And now?" Grayson asked, his deep voice soft in the gathering darkness. She considered the question carefully. "Now, I'm beginning to believe in permanence again." His hand found hers in the darkness, a gentle pressure that spoke volumes. Neither acknowledged the touch, but neither pulled away until they rose to retire for the night. A week passed without word from Tucson or further visits from Carlton, though Hank reported seeing him in town regularly. The waiting grew more difficult, and Willow found herself increasingly restless, confined to the ranch for safety. "I need air," she declared one afternoon, setting aside the mending she'd been struggling with. "I cannot stay inside another moment." Grayson looked up from his ledgers, concern evident. Carlton could be watching. "Then let him watch me walk in your garden," she replied with uncharacteristic sharpness. "I'm not asking to ride to town." He studied her for a moment, then nodded. "I'll come with you." The ranch's garden was modest but well established, with vegetables and herbs growing in neat rows and a few hardy flowers adding color along the edges. A large cottonwood provided dappled shade, and Willow made her way there, breathing deeply of the sage-scented air. "Better?" Grayson asked, following her. "Yes." She closed her eyes, feeling the breeze against her face. "I'm sorry for snapping. I'm not usually so ill-tempered." "You're under considerable strain," he said simply. "No apology needed." She opened her eyes to find him watching her, his expression unreadable. "You've been remarkably patient with all of this." "Patience is a rancher's primary virtue," he replied with a slight smile. "That and stubbornness. You have both in abundance," she said, returning his smile. "A necessity when dealing with cattle and cowboys alike." He motioned toward a rough-hewn bench beneath the tree. "Sit with me." They settled side by side, shoulders almost touching. For several minutes they simply existed in comfortable silence, watching the distant mountains shimmer in the afternoon heat. "I keep thinking about what happens after," Willow said finally. "After Carlton leaves, after the marshal comes, after—" She hesitated. "After I'm no longer in danger and have no reason to impose on your hospitality." Grayson turned to face her. "Is that what you think you're doing? Imposing, aren't I?" "You've put yourself at risk, disrupted your life, all for someone I've come to care for greatly," he interrupted, his voice low and fervent. "Willow, having you here has been the opposite of a burden." The intensity in his gray eyes made her breath catch. "Grayson." "You don't need to decide anything now," he said quickly. "Just know that when this is over you have options, one of which is staying." Before she could respond, hoofbeats sounded from the road. They both rose, tension returning instantly. Grayson's hand moved to the revolver at his hip. "Inside," he ordered quietly. "No," she stood her ground. "I won't hide any more." The rider who appeared was not Carlton but Hank, galloping hard. He reined in sharply when he reached them. "Marshal's here," he announced, breathing hard. "Just rode into town with 3 deputies. They've already taken Carlton into custody. Marshal's asking for both of you to come in." Relief and trepidation warred within Willow. "Now, soon as you can get there," Hank confirmed. "Said it's urgent." Grayson nodded. "Tell Martha to prepare the buggy. We'll leave immediately." As Hank rode toward the barn, Grayson turned to Willow. "Are you ready for this?" She squared her shoulders. "Yes. It's time to end it." The ride to Gila Bend passed in tense silence, Willow rehearsing her testimony while Grayson kept a vigilant eye on their surroundings. The town itself was small but growing, a dusty main street lined with false-fronted buildings, a couple of saloons, a general store, and the 2-story hotel where Carlton had been staying. The marshal had set up in the sheriff's office, a grizzled man with weathered features and sharp eyes that missed nothing. He introduced himself as Marshal Daniel Wheeler. "Miss Jenkins," he greeted her with a nod. "I've been reading your statement, serious accusations against a powerful man." "Every word is true," she replied steadily. "I believe you," Wheeler said, surprising her. Because we've been building a case against Theodore Blackwood for months, your information fills in several gaps in our understanding of his operation." Hope surged within her. "Then you'll arrest him." "That's the plan." Wheeler gestured for them to sit. "But there's a complication. Carlton, real name Joseph Harding, has been Blackwood's enforcer for years. When we arrested him, he had these on his person." He slid several papers across the desk. They were letters, all addressed to Theodore Blackwood, all in Willow's handwriting. "I never wrote to him after I fled," she protested, confused. "No," Wheeler agreed grimly. "But someone forged your hand convincingly. These letters suggest you're attempting to blackmail Blackwood. They create a very different picture of your flight." Grayson leaned forward. "Blackwood setting her up." "That would be my assessment," Wheeler nodded. "If Miss Jenkins were to disappear now, these letters would provide motive for her to have gone into hiding. Or if something unfortunate were to happen to her, they'd suggest she'd made dangerous enemies through criminal activity." Willow felt the blood drain from her face. "He's planned for everything." "Not everything," Wheeler countered. "He didn't plan for you to find allies or for us to already be investigating him. But this does change our approach." "How?" Grayson asked. "We need more than Miss Jenkins's testimony now. We need hard evidence. The ledgers she mentioned would be ideal." "Those are in sync." "Louis in his study," Willow said hopelessly. "Actually," Wheeler replied, "Blackwood is currently in Tucson meeting with associates, and according to our information he travels with his business records." Understanding dawned on Grayson's face. "You want to set a trap?" "Yes." The marshal's gaze fixed on Willow. With Miss Jenkins as bait, fear gripped her, but determination quickly followed. "What would I need to do?" "Word will reach Blackwood that you've been located in Gila Bend. When he comes, and he will be waiting." Grayson's face hardened. "That's too dangerous. She'll be directly in his path." "Not without protection," Wheeler assured him. "My deputies and I will ensure her safety." "I'll do it," Willow said firmly. "If it means ending his operation and protecting those girls, I'll face him." Grayson turned to her, conflict evident in his expression. "Willow, this is my choice," she said softly, touching his arm. "I need to finish what began when I discovered those ledgers." The marshal outlined his plan. Willow would stay at the hotel, visible enough for word to reach Blackwood. When he arrived, likely within days, she would meet with him under the pretense of negotiating. The marshal and his men would be positioned to intercept and arrest Blackwood once he incriminated himself. "It's not without risk," Wheeler acknowledged, "but it's our best chance to get concrete evidence against him." As they left the sheriff's office, Grayson remained unusually quiet. When they reached the buggy, he finally spoke. "I don't like this." "I know," Willow replied gently. "But it's necessary." "At least let me stay with you at the hotel," she shook her head. The marshal was clear. "Blackwood needs to believe I'm alone and vulnerable. Your presence would make him suspicious." Grayson's jaw clenched. "And if something goes wrong, it won't." She touched his cheek, the first such gesture between them. "But if it does, I know you'll come for me." His hand caught hers, holding it against his face. "Nothing will happen to you, I swear it." The intensity in his eyes made her heart flutter. "I trust you, Grayson. More than anyone I've ever known." He leaned forward slowly, giving her time to withdraw, and pressed his lips to her forehead in a gentle benediction. "Be careful," he whispered against her skin. "I couldn't bear to lose you now." The admission sent warmth cascading through her. "You won't lose me," she promised. "I have too much to live for." That evening, Willow settled into her room at the Gila Bend Hotel with a mixture of determination and trepidation. Marshal Wheeler had arranged for a female deputy's wife to stay in the adjoining room as additional protection and companionship. The woman, Mrs. Eleanor Foster, was kind but watchful. her friendly demeanor belying her sharp observation skills. "My husband says you're very brave," Alina remarked as they took supper together in Willow's room, "standing against a man like Blackwood." "Not brave," Willow replied, "just unable to live with the alternative." Alina smiled knowingly. "And that ranch owner who brought you to town? He seems quite concerned for your welfare." Despite her anxiety, Willow felt her cheeks warm. "Mr. Iverson has been very kind. Alina hummed noncommittally. "That's one word for how he looks at you." The comment lingered in Willow's mind as she prepared for bed. How did Grayson look at her? With concern, certainly. With respect, perhaps. But was there more? The memory of his lips against her forehead, the gentle pressure of his hand on hers, suggested possibilities she'd scarcely allowed herself to consider. When she closed her eyes, it was Grayson's face she saw, steady, resolute, increasingly dear to her heart. 2 days passed with no word of Blackwood. Willow established a routine of taking breakfast in the hotel dining room, where she could be easily observed, then spending the afternoon reading in the small parlor. Each evening, she would walk to the general store with Alina, ensuring her presence in town was noted. On the third morning, as she descended the stairs to the dining room, Marshal Wheeler intercepted her. "He's coming," he said quietly. "Arrived in Tucson yesterday and is expected here by nightfall." Willow's heart pounded, but she kept her expression neutral. "Then we proceed as planned. My men are in position. When he arrives, he'll likely send someone ahead to confirm your presence. Act natural, but be alert." She nodded, resuming her path to breakfast with outward calm that belied her inner turmoil. Throughout the day, she felt like a deer sensing a mountain lion's presence, hyper-aware, tensed for danger. As evening approached, Alina helped her dress with special care, selecting a blue dress that complemented her eyes and arranging her hair simply but elegantly. "You want to appear confident but not provocative," Alina advised. "A woman prepared to negotiate, not one expecting confrontation." As the sun set, painting the desert in gold and crimson, Willow sat by the window of her room, watching the main street. The stagecoach had arrived hours ago with no sign of Blackwood, but Wheeler had warned he might travel privately to avoid notice. A soft knock at her door startled her. Alina answered it, exchanged quiet words with someone, then turned to Willow with a grim expression. "He's here," she said simply. "Just checked into the hotel. The marshal says to prepare yourself, he'll likely approach you soon." Willow nodded, rising to smooth her skirts with hands that trembled slightly. "I'm ready." Alina squeezed her shoulder. "I'll be right next door. If you call out, I'll hear." Alone in her room, Willow paced, rehearsing what she would say when confronted by the man she'd once thought she loved. The man whose true nature had sent her fleeing across half a country. The knock, when it came, still made her jump despite her preparations. "Willow." "It's Theodore. We need to talk." His voice, smooth, cultured, deceptively pleasant, brought back a flood of memories. Taking a deep breath, she opened the door. Theodore Blackwood stood in the hallway, impeccably dressed as always, his handsome features arranged in an expression of concern. Only his eyes, cold and calculating, revealed his true feelings. "May I come in?" he asked, as though this were a social call. She stepped back, allowing him entry. "I'm surprised to see you, Theodore." "Are you?" He glanced around the modest room. "I've been looking for you for quite some time." "You left rather abruptly." "We both know why," she replied evenly. He sighed, affecting disappointment. "You misunderstood what you saw. If you'd given me a chance to explain selling young girls into bondage." The words came out sharper than intended. "I saw the ledgers, Theodore. I know exactly what you're doing." His facade cracked just slightly. "And now you're attempting to profit from that knowledge." He withdrew one of the forged letters from his jacket. "Did you think I wouldn't recognize blackmail? I didn't write those," she said firmly. "No." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Your signature suggests otherwise, as does your flight. Innocent people don't run, Willow. They do when threatened with death." He moved closer, and she fought the urge to back away. "I've come to offer you a proposition. Return to St. Louis with me as my wife. You'll want for nothing. In exchange, you'll forget what you think you saw. And if I refuse," his expression hardened, "then I'll have no choice but to protect my family's interests by whatever means necessary." "You'd kill me." She stated it as fact. "I'd prefer not to," he said smoothly. "You were quite charming once, before you developed these inconvenient principles." Willow's hand moved to the small bell on the side table, the signal agreed upon with Wheeler. "I won't return with you, Theodore, and I won't be silenced." His hand shot out, gripping her wrist painfully before she could reach the bell. "I was afraid you'd say that." With his free hand, he drew a small pistol from his jacket. "We'll leave through the back stairs. You'll come quietly, or I'll ensure your rancher friend meets with an unfortunate accident. Carlton told me how protective he seemed." Fear gripped her, not for herself but for Grayson. "Leave him out of this." "That depends entirely on you." He jerked her toward the door. "Now move." She had no choice but to comply, praying the marshal was watching closely enough to intervene. Theodore kept the pistol pressed against her side, concealed by his coat as he guided her down the hallway toward the rear stairs. "My men have a wagon waiting," he informed her in a low voice. "By morning, we'll be far from here." "And then what?" she asked, trying to slow their pace. "Then we'll discuss your future, or lack thereof." The cold indifference in his voice chilled her to the bone. They reached the back landing, and Theodore pushed her down the narrow staircase ahead of him. At the bottom, instead of the exit she expected, Grayson Iverson stood waiting, revolver drawn. "Let her go, Blackwood," he said, voice deadly calm. Theodore yanked Willow against him, the pistol now pressed to her temple. "Mr. Iverson, I presume. How convenient. Now I can eliminate two problems at once." "You're surrounded," Grayson informed him. "Marshal Wheeler and his deputies are covering every exit." As if to confirm his words, the back door opened to reveal Wheeler, his own weapon trained on Blackwood. "Release Miss Jenkins and drop your weapon," the marshal ordered. Theodore's grip tightened painfully. "If I'm going to hang regardless, what's one more death? Back away or she dies first." Time seemed to slow. Willow felt Theodore's finger tensing on the trigger, saw Grayson's expression shift from determined to desperate, heard Wheeler's sharp intake of breath. In that moment of crystallized awareness, she acted on pure instinct. She slammed her elbow backward with all her strength into Theodore's diaphragm. As he gasped involuntarily, his grip loosened just enough for her to twist away. The pistol discharged with a deafening crack, the bullet splintering the wooden banister inches from her head. Before Theodore could recover, Grayson lunged forward, tackling him to the ground. The pistol clattered across the floor as the two men grappled. Despite his refined appearance, Theodore fought with desperate ferocity, landing a solid blow to Grayson's jaw before Grayson pinned him with a well-placed punch to the solar plexus. Wheeler moved in swiftly, dragging Theodore's arms behind his back and securing them with handcuffs. "Theodore Blackwood, you're under arrest for trafficking, attempted murder, and about a dozen other charges I'll enjoy listing formally." As deputies appeared to take custody of the prisoner, Grayson rushed to Willow, gathering her into his arms. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head against his chest, trembling now that danger had passed. "I'm all right. You came. Wild horses couldn't have kept me away." His arms tightened around her. "When Wheeler told me Blackwood had arrived, I couldn't stay at the ranch." She pulled back enough to look at him, noting the darkening bruise on his jaw. "He could have killed you. He could have killed you," Grayson countered, his voice rough with emotion. "I couldn't bear that, Willow, not when I've only just found you." Marshal Wheeler approached, interrupting the moment. "Miss Jenkins, we found the ledgers in Blackwood's luggage exactly as you described. Combined with your testimony, it's more than enough to put him away for good." Relief washed over her. "It's really over." "It is," Wheeler confirmed. "Though we'll need you to make a formal statement tomorrow." "Of course," she agreed. When the marshal left them, Grayson kept his arm around her waist. "Let me take you back to the ranch tonight. You shouldn't stay here after what happened." She nodded, suddenly exhausted. "I'd like that very much." The ride back to Rocking Eye was quiet. Willow nestled against Grayson's side in the buggy. The stars overhead seemed brighter somehow, the desert air sweeter now that the shadow of Theodore Blackwood no longer loomed over her future. As the ranch house came into view, lantern light glowing welcomingly in the windows, Willow felt a profound sense of homecoming that had nothing to do with the building itself and everything to do with the man beside her. "What happens now?" she asked softly as Grayson helped her from the buggy. He took her hands in his expression earnest in the moonlight. "That depends on what you want, Willow." "What if I want to stay?" The question emerged barely above a whisper. "Then you'd make me the happiest man in the Arizona Territory." He lifted her hand to his lips. "I've grown to care for you deeply, Willow Jenkins, more than I thought possible." Her heart swelled at the simple declaration. "I care for you too, Grayson. These past weeks, despite everything, have been—" "A beginning," he suggested when she trailed off. "Yes," she agreed, smiling up at him. "A beginning." He leaned down slowly, giving her every opportunity to withdraw. Instead, she rose on her toes to meet him halfway, their lips meeting in a tender, questioning kiss that quickly deepened into something more certain. His arms encircled her waist, drawing her closer as her hands found their way to his shoulders. When they finally parted, breathless and smiling, Grayson pressed his forehead to hers. "Stay," he whispered. "Not as my housekeeper, not out of obligation or gratitude. Stay because you want to see what we might build together." "I'll stay," she promised, her heart fuller than she'd ever known it could be. "For as long as you'll have me." "That could be a very long time," he warned, eyes crinkling at the corners. "I'm counting on it," she replied, reaching up to kiss him again beneath the vast Arizona sky. In the weeks that followed, Willow's testimony helped secure Theodore Blackwood's conviction. The evidence proved even more damning than expected, exposing a trafficking operation that stretched across multiple states and territories. While Theodore awaited federal prison, his victims, many still recoverable, were rescued and provided sanctuary. Willow found herself transformed by the experience. The woman who had arrived at Grayson's gate half dead from exhaustion had been replaced by someone stronger, more certain of her path. She still kept the house in meticulous order and assisted with the ranch books. But now she did so not as an employee but as a partner in a growing enterprise. Grayson, too, changed. The solitary rancher who had built his world around cattle and commerce now found greater joy in shared meals, evening conversations, and planning a future that included Willow in every aspect. Their courtship progressed with the steady certainty of people who had already faced life's hardest tests together. By Christmas, when the desert wore a rare dusting of snow like delicate lace, Grayson asked Willow to become his wife. "I know it hasn't been long," he said as they stood before the hearth, a small velvet box in his hand, "but I've never been more sure of anything." Willow took the box with trembling fingers. Inside lay a modest but beautifully crafted ring, a small diamond flanked by 2 sapphires. "It's perfect," she whispered. "Is that a yes?" he asked, his usual confidence momentarily wavering. She slipped the ring onto her finger, then reached up to frame his face with both hands. "It's 1,000 times yes." They married on a clear spring day in 1879, with the desert blooming around them in a brief, spectacular display of wildflowers. The ceremony took place beneath the cottonwood tree where they had first acknowledged their growing feelings, with Hank serving as best man and Alina Foster, who had become a dear friend, as Willow's attendant. Marshal Wheeler attended as well, bringing news that Theodore Blackwood had been sentenced to 20 years in federal prison, and that his operation had been completely dismantled. "You've done a great service," he told Willow during the celebration afterward. "And found happiness in the bargain, it seems." She glanced at Grayson, who was deep in conversation with the local banker about expanding the ranch. "I found more than happiness," she replied. "I found home." As summer approached, bringing with it the intense heat of the Arizona desert, Willow and Grayson settled into married life with unexpected ease. The ranch prospered under their joint management, with Grayson focusing on the cattle operation while Willow handled the business affairs and household. Word of their success and the dramatic circumstances of their meeting spread throughout the territory. Occasionally, women in desperate situations would appear at their gate, drawn by rumors of the couple who offered sanctuary to those in need. "We can't turn them away," Willow insisted after the third such arrival, a young widow fleeing an abusive brother-in-law. "Not when we have the means to help." Grayson, seeing the determination in his wife's eyes, agreed readily. "We'll need to build another room," was his only stipulation. By their first anniversary, the Rocking Eye had gained a reputation as both a successful cattle operation and a place of refuge. Willow established a small school for the children of ranch hands and neighboring homesteaders, finding joy in the teaching position she had originally sought in Gila Bend. On a warm evening in late August, exactly 1 year after Willow had collapsed at Grayson's gate, they sat together on the porch, watching the sunset paint the desert in fiery hues. "Happy anniversary," Grayson said, handing her a small package wrapped in brown paper. "Our wedding anniversary isn't for months yet," she reminded him with a smile. "Not that anniversary." His eyes softened with memory. "1 year ago today, you fainted from exhaustion at my gate, and I told you that I wasn't moving until I was strong," she finished for him. "Little did you know I'd never leave." "I had hopes," he admitted with a grin. "Open it." Inside the package, she found a journal bound in soft leather, its pages blank except for an inscription on the first page in Grayson's bold handwriting. "For Willow, who found her strength and gave me mine. All my love now and always." Tears pricked her eyes as she ran her fingers over the words. "It's perfect." "I thought you might record our story," he suggested, "for the children we'll have someday." Her heart swelled at the tenderness in his voice. "I'd like that very much." He drew her closer, his arm warm around her shoulders. "When I found you at my gate that day, I had no idea how completely you'd change my life. For the better, I hope," she teased gently, "in every possible way." He kissed her temple. "You brought light to places I didn't even know were dark." Willow leaned into his embrace, savoring the security of his arms and the future they were building together. "You know what I thought when I first saw your ranch on the horizon? I thought it was a mirage, something beautiful but unreachable. And now I know it was destiny." She turned to kiss him properly, pouring a year's worth of gratitude and love into the gesture. "The best kind of destiny, one we're writing ourselves, day by day." As night fell across the desert, bringing with it a canopy of stars and the distant song of coyotes, Willow and Grayson remained on the porch, planning their future, remembering their past, and cherishing their present. The ranch around them, once merely Grayson's hard-won kingdom, had become something more profound. A true home, built on the foundation of their improbable love. In the years that followed, the Rocking Eye Ranch flourished beyond anyone's expectations. Grayson's innovative breeding programs produced cattle particularly suited to the harsh Arizona climate, while Willow's careful management and expanding educational initiatives made the ranch a model operation throughout the territory. Their first child, a son they named James after Willow's father, arrived in the spring of 1881, followed by twin daughters, Sarah and Margaret, 18 months later. Grayson proved to be a doting father, often carrying a child on his shoulders as he supervised ranch operations. Willow balanced motherhood with her continued work, expanding her small school to accommodate the growing number of children at the ranch. By 1885, the Rocking Eye had become one of the largest and most prosperous ranches in the territory. Their home, originally Grayson's bachelor dwelling, had expanded to a comfortable two-story house with a wraparound porch where the family gathered on summer evenings. The garden where Grayson and Willow had first acknowledged their feelings had grown into an oasis of green, with fruit trees and flowers defying the desert's harshness. Word of Theodore Blackwood occasionally reached them. He had died in prison in 1884, unrepentant to the end. The news had affected Willow less than she expected, that chapter of her life long closed and replaced by happier narratives. In the autumn of 1890, as Arizona moved toward statehood, Grayson was approached about running for territorial legislature. Willow, now a respected figure in her own right for her educational advocacy, supported his decision to accept the nomination. "You could make a real difference," she told him as they discussed the possibility. "Your ideas about water rights and land management are exactly what the territory needs." He took her hands, still beautiful despite years of work. "I wouldn't consider it without your partnership. This would be our undertaking, not just mine." "Then we'll face it together," she replied with the quiet confidence that had become her hallmark, "as we've faced everything else." On their 15th wedding anniversary, with their children growing tall and the ranch secure in its prosperity, Grayson surprised Willow with a journey back to the cottonwood tree where they'd married, now much larger and casting generous shade. Beneath its branches, he'd arranged a small table with a bottle of champagne and the journal he'd given her years before, now filled with her neat handwriting documenting their life together. 15 years, he marveled, pouring the champagne into 2 glasses. "Sometimes it seems like yesterday that I found you at my gate. Other times, I can barely remember life before you." Willow smiled, the years having added character to her beauty without diminishing it. "The best decision I ever made was fainting at your particular gate." He laughed, the sound still capable of warming her heart. "And the best decision I ever made was insisting you weren't moving until you were strong." "I'd say we've both grown strong together," she observed, raising her glass to his. "To strength," he agreed, "and to love which makes it possible." As the sun set behind the mountains, painting the desert in gold and rose, Grayson and Willow Iverson sat hand in hand beneath the cottonwood tree, surrounded by the legacy they had built together: a prosperous ranch, 3 thriving children, and a love that had not merely endured but deepened with each passing year. "Do you ever wonder," Willow asked softly, "what would have happened if I'd chosen a different path that day? If I'd headed toward Phoenix instead of Gila Bend?" Grayson considered the question, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "I think some things are meant to be, regardless of the path. We might have met later, differently, but I believe we would have found each other eventually." "That's rather romantic for a practical rancher," she teased. "You've had that effect on me," he admitted with a smile. teaching me that some things transcend practicality. As twilight deepened into night, they walked back to their home, where their children waited and their future continued to unfold. The desert stretched vast around them, no longer a hostile wilderness but the backdrop to their shared life, challenging, beautiful, and ultimately generous to those with the courage and commitment to thrive there. For Willow Jenkins Iverson, the journey that had begun in desperate flight had led to the greatest happiness she could have imagined. And for Grayson Iverson, the solitary life he'd built had been transformed by the woman who had fainted at his gate, bringing with her a strength that matched and completed his own. Together, they had created something neither could have achieved alone, a legacy of love that would endure long after they were gone, as enduring as the desert itself, and as life-giving as water in a parched land. And in the journal that recorded their story, Willow had written what would become their family's motto, words spoken by a determined cowboy to an exhausted stranger on a fateful August day. "You're not moving until you're strong." Words that had begun as a promise of temporary shelter, but had become the foundation of a lifetime shared.